Welcome to the Revenue Rewired podcast, hosted by StringCan Interactive's visionary CEO Jay Feitlinger and no nonsense COO Sarah Shepard. We're here to accelerate your revenue and give your marketing purpose. All right. Well, hello and welcome everybody to this next episode of the Revenue Rewired podcast. Hi, Jay.
How's it going, Sarah?
Good. I was just thinking with all of our prep for these calls, we should have an outtakes video at some point or audio.
I think I'd be embarrassed because we sound like complete
Probably.
nonsense. It's about
Yeah, we
wine
do.
and wine and food.
And old TV shows.
Wow. Okay,
Sorry.
here we go. Segue,
Well,
please.
segue. We'll do that. We want to talk about why referrals are not a growth strategy. And this topic has actually been a interesting one, to say it nicely, over the last couple of years. I don't know about you, Jay, but I get a ton of cold emails that are like basically accusing you of relying on referrals, and you're doing your business a disservice. And part of me looks at this and I think, why is this such a bad thing? Like, what is it about referrals that yields this negativity, especially with outreach in terms of helping gain better market share through advertising or whatever channels you have? I'm
hmm
curious what that has meant to you, especially as things have changed and how the buyer journey has just totally flipped over in the last decade.
Well, I think there's definitely some semantics going on there. So I see your perspective, and it does definitely get a kind of a bad rap. But I don't think it's a negative thing. I just think it's not a thing you can rely on. So first of all, on the positive side, I think if a business isn't getting referrals, that's a whole nother conversation or problem that we obviously need to think about. But let's go on the positive side that they are getting referrals. I don't think people should be upset about that, because it's obviously implies that you are delivering a high quality product and or you've differentiated your business on how you're supporting, your client or customer. And so I think from a growth perspective, you definitely want to have a percentage of your growth, in my opinion, coming from referrals, because without that, it definitely means that maybe you have a problem where your clients are like, they're good enough. I'll just stay with the company. But if they aren't like ambassadors of your brand, and if someone reaches out, they're like, oh my gosh, I need help with X, Y, and Z. If you're not top of mind, that is a concern to me. And so I think the reason why it does get some negative connotation to it is that where this is true, you can't rely on referrals. No matter how good of a job you do with your current customers and encouraging them to give you referrals, it's a very passive approach. And so if you're just basically sitting on the beach and waiting for things to roll up and happen, that is basically like referrals. Instead, what you got to do is have a more of a proactive approach, and that's where I think the growth strategy comes into play that you need to think about. That I think a lot of people are alluding to probably in the emails that you're referring to. That again, you need to have an approach with your business development and marketing efforts that's really kind of going after the ideal clients, and not having to only rely on referrals.
Well, how do you, and I know we've had this conversation with like, especially business owners and entrepreneurs, and they're like, my referral game is so strong. That means business development is also strong. Are they the same
Yes, I mean,
thing?
no. So I see where you're going with this. Um, so first of all, I am pretty blown away how uncomfortable businesses are, regardless of their size, in even asking for referrals. So the problem is I had a meeting again with a CEO of a mid-market business a few weeks ago, and we had this kind of conversation about this. And he today is not getting referrals, and he's like, I just worry that maybe we have an issue, and then that's why they're not doing it. I'm like, well, but how do you know? You're just making all these assumptions and wasting all this energy. If you don't ask, you shouldn't be surprised you aren't getting them. So maybe you guys are doing a great job, but if you don't have any kind of proactive plan in place with your current customer base to have these conversations with them. And obviously, again, you can start with asking for feedback, and then a feedback, good or bad, you obviously learn from it. But definitely those that are going well, then you have the conversation about, are there other companies out there that you think would be a great fit for us to support? And you start having that conversation. And so obviously, I'm not saying overnight develop this insane referral program where you're incentivizing your clients and you're bombarding them. But if you don't even start the conversation, then I think you're missing a huge opportunity. Now, tying it into the biz dev comments, it's really interesting because from an old school kind of sales mentality that where my brain is wired, what's funny is I would never say referrals is equals business development. So for me, business development has to be I am proactively every day doing stuff and typically, that's looking for new clients. Now, if your business development strategy is, hey, we want to do like a referral approach where you're meeting with your top clients or you're meeting with referral partners that have access and influence to your ideal client. Now, that part I would say is business development because again, you're proactively meeting with people to have these meaningful, relevant conversations with the intention of getting, foot in the door to a client. But typically, again, the referral, it's a kind of a two-step approach, almost like, skimming, a stone on top of water. Each bounce basically does add friction and does delay, the process of you getting access. So for me, business development, it's like 80% plus is all about what pond should I fish in where my ideal clients are at to have conversation with those that are, either strangers or warm that I can offer value to. And that is what I would tie into business development. So that's a really interesting question that you asked. I'm curious after hearing that, do you agree? Do you want to challenge any of that? I'd love to hear your perspective on how I kind of explain my point of view.
Yeah, that was helpful because I think where referral gets like kind of lumped in is normally I would consider most people think of your business is based on referrals as a very passive type of approach. And where we're trying to break through the differentiation is you can have an active approach to that. But it still is now just a piece of your business development and growth strategy. But anything passive is not a growth strategy. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's a really helpful line to bridge because it it just gets assumed that you're not doing anything and that wow your work is amazing and isn't that great and honestly doesn't everyone wish that was the case but that's not how it works and it's really still even if it's coming in and you're getting a great passive pipeline, it's still not necessarily a good growth strategy. It
Mm-hmm.
does say a lot about your business, but as we've talked about, like on this podcast and in a bunch of our materials in our book and stuff, it still is part of this whole loop or infinity symbol or funnel or cycle. But either way, you're only taking care of half of that. The predictability piece is critical for you to be able to grow. And I would almost propose that if you could have one word that would help you grow, it's predictability.
Hmm.
Is your pipeline predictable? Are your services predictable? Is your, you know, client relationship conversations are the outcomes of those predictable? The world we're living in has become so unpredictable that getting even just a little bit more focused on how to help create a better growth, predictable growth strategy is going to help you more than ever. So I don't know that I don't think I disagree with you. I'm just adding more fluff to what you said.
No, I love what you're saying there. So I guess to sum all that up, it sounds like overall, we are quite aligned. Um, I think I think to your point, it's like um, referrals. Um, is an area that you can't rely on for your growth strategy. So I think let's just sum it up as that, because that is where I think it gets into that point where I mean, I meet with so many businesses and even like, our agency friends who own other agencies. It's like everyone beats themselves up about the referral thing. So I really appreciate your context in this one because I think we got to change our mindset here. Referrals is not bad. It's actually amazing. And it's just the problem is that to your point, on the predictable side, if you are in growth mode, and I hope most businesses are, again, you just can't rely on the referrals. So I think why don't we maybe segue a little bit into so let's stay on this topic because there is so many benefits and lessons learned around referrals that I think actually can really help inspire and create an amazing growth strategy where now you have an amazing blend between kind of that passive model of relying on or hoping the referrals come in, and then you can do active things that we talked about already there. But then why don't we segue into like having the conversation about then what can this help you with your growth strategy? What do you think about that idea?
I love it.
All
I
right,
have
do you have any
thoughts.
thoughts first there, or I'm going to jump into it?
I think to be crazy when you were talking about this, the first thing that pops into my mind is the question that somebody asks when it's a passive referral, the question somebody asks another person where your business becomes part of the conversation.
Yep.
That pain point, like fine tuning, is incredible. Now, obviously, there's caveats though, because the whole trust, I don't know, I'd call it like a trust pyramid, sort of, where there's a lot of trust usually when conversations like that are happening. And I think that doesn't get as much help in terms of bridging the cold gap. And so that's where I would say the first nugget comes from, maybe the
I
most
love that,
important nugget.
Sarah. I think again, we probably could do a whole nother show about just this because again, I think, there's so much opportunity just on the intentional side of stuff. And so, I think for us, um, relationships matter so much to us. And I think most businesses hopefully does as well. And so I think for us, we naturally think through, hey, this needs to be a win-win. And so, we come up with a strategy of we want to give our clients an opportunity to share feedback because again, we're human and with how fast the world's moving, especially due to AI and whatnot, we're gonna stumble over ourselves sometimes and we're gonna make mistakes and that's okay. But I think our clients, when we very openly have conversations with them about, hey, give us feedback, good, bad, and ugly. And obviously you can word it in numerous different ways. I think if you have a level of trust and they know they're in a kind of a safe space and you actually do want the honest, constructive feedback, I think sometimes clients really appreciate that. Now, obviously, the trick's going to be is when you get that feedback, you've got to act on it because more often than not, they're going to give you feedback that you're like, ooh, never thought about that. And so obviously going back into the business and working on improving your stuff is important. But I think as you're working with those clients and you're delivering value and you're developing a really solid relationship, I think then it's like very appropriate to have that referral conversation. I know some businesses, depending upon the industry they're in, it might make sense to formalize it and offer some kind of incentive. For our kind of professional services type of business, it always felt a little icky to me, but obviously it depends on the situation there. But I think you're right. Like, let's maybe kind of segue away from that for a second, because if you are getting referrals, it means that you're doing something right. And hopefully you're more proactive than just waiting for those random referrals to come your way. But obviously, it always feels so good. So I guess here are my thoughts and kind of like maybe the remainder of this show is when we were thinking about, having this conversation about referrals isn't a growth strategy, my mind immediately went to, well, what can you learn from referrals to help you with your growth strategy? And that's the part that got me so excited about this, where I think, again, we're always been my favorite animal as those that know me as a monkey. And I always loved reading, Curious George growing up. And I just feel like minus the mischief part, even though I did cause a lot of trouble growing up, as my brothers and my parents would probably tell you. But I just love the idea of like just being super curious and real and empathetic and just understanding and listening and learning. And so, when we get a referral from a one of our current clients, or maybe even a past clients, or one of my favorites is a contact of ours that worked at a client of ours in the past, changed jobs, and then basically brought us into the new company, which obviously those are my favorite things. But I spend the time into really, rather than just saying thank you so much, I invest the energy into understanding how that whole thing went down. And I've had this chat now probably with, I don't know, 50 to 100 different clients over the years. And every time I do it, I learn something new. And I just find it to be so that data is so beyond gold because then it's like, well, what was their pain point? And then how did you word uh, how we offer value? And I usually walk away from those with so many little nuggets. For example, it happened to me a couple of years ago where how our client explained the value we brought and it was the main reason why that company called us and became a new client of ours was not at all how I was explaining what we do. And again, this was, definitely a few years ago. And when I looked at our positioning from that lens, I realized we had just a little bit too much marketing fluff in place. And it allowed me to just to tighten things up. Because again, a lot of our clients, they don't fully understand all the things that go behind the scenes. It just, I know it's overwhelming. That's not their job to worry about. But how they can articulate the assumed pain point they have and the kind of questions they want to get answered to know if a possible new partner could be a good fit for them, both short and long term, that is so valuable for me. And so, if you already have a trusted client in place who cherishes that relationship and you have this dialogue with them, it opens up your eyes to so many exciting things about your process, your positioning, your product, your people. It just all of typical marketing P's. And it just gets me really excited about taking advantage of that and helping you kind of fine tune it because unfortunately, as we all know, when it comes to like the digital, customer journey process, except for the chatbots and AI and whatnot, you don't have the opportunity to fully have that back and forth dialogue. And so now the words do matter, either via text or audio or video. And I think people processing that based upon what their needs are makes a big difference. And so when marketing people kind of like over engineer the marketing fluff and the wording that they feel is going to make them sound good, it's just noise. And so I think the more we get real to exactly how people talk and think and listen and what they need, I think that's a huge a gem. And then once you kind of have that kind of tightened up, now you can leverage that across all the tactics you're doing and obviously, of course, your strategy on doing the proper growth strategy stuff. And that's where I get really excited because now you can have so much more confidence that, wow, this client, was this kind of industry, this kind of size, these kind of pain points. If you build out a very tailored offering that explains exactly those things, and then you go and find their company that's like them, they're going to be like, wow, these people are like in my brain. They probably have a microphone in my office somehow listening to me. And this feels like it's a one-to-one. And that's how a good business development approach should feel like, where you're a chameleon, but very strategic about that. And again, that's why I love the referral conversations, that if you aren't having these discussions, you're going at this blind.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is like it reminds me so much of lookalike audiences in
Yeah.
paid media, and how important that is. And it it almost is like building one upon another and getting similarities. And it's funny because I also am seeing that in AI. It's just building a better, I don't want to say, like, I've seen a lot of walls in France. Like I saw a lot of stone walls today, so my mind cannot get away from that. But it's like that where this is kind of interesting. I saw a wall today and it's ancient, like from the, I don't know, 1500s or something. And the wall has tons and tons of stones and they look like kind of like bricks, but there's no mortar holding them together. And they have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so it's because they are so alike. And I think like understanding also the opposite of that, getting away from the the walls here is if the referral, you and I remember a while ago, we had a referral and it was like, well, that was interesting. They came to us trying to solve another problem with someone else, but we
Yes.
could do, and why didn't they come to us first? And so that was
Yep.
interesting to kind of like reverse engineer why we weren't part of the original conversation. We were really like a side referral or a
Yep.
accidental referral. That was really strange, but
I mean, that was a
awesome.
weird one. But I think again, I mean, there's always going to be that millisecond of sting sometimes. In that scenario, as you know, we chatted about that. I took it a little too hard and wasted too much energy, at least after the call when I was talking about that with you, because this was a person that greatly trusted me. The problem they had was so beyond in our wheelhouse. We had so many case studies and examples of how we solved that. And the fact that he did not think about us first, it really bothered me to the point where I had a follow-up chat with him over lunch to kind of better understand that. And once I understood it, it made so much more sense to me. But what I found from that scenario, high level, is his assumption was this was too small of a project for us. And from everything he was seeing online, he didn't think that we would have the capacity because he needed the work done like ASAP. And my response back was like, but why didn't you at least give me a chance? And so what ended up happening was in that scenario, to your point, to kind of fill in the story a little bit, is he basically met with a few other agencies and he was getting back complete nonsense from all of them. It was just like a find and replace, insert company name here kind of thing. And no one was explaining it. And he's like, I don't know how to better talk to these agencies. So I then helped him by reviewing their proposals and looked at how he was talking and the things he was asking. And I could see there was a huge communication breakdown there. And so I kind of coached him through, okay, well, here's how I would have wanted you to talk to me and give me information, and here's how I can see why you're getting back. But unfortunately, the firms that you're talking to, they're a very typical tactical marketing shop, and they know what they know, and that's why you're getting back like one saying Facebook and one saying YouTube. It's like they're just selling you and recommending to you what they know how to do. And so, and then through that conversation, then he's like, God, you're saying things to me I never even thought about. He's like, I didn't think about that. So could this look like a scenario where, you help somehow? And I'm like, why don't we just do this for you? And then he's like, wait, what? And I'm like, if the concern you have is we don't have the timing, let's talk about that. But do you really need all this stuff done in a week and a half? Because here's the risks you have. And we had that whole entire conversation. And he's like, oh my God, a phased approach will be better for me. And so blah, blah, blah. And so I guess I wanted to share that a little bit because you get in these conversations with people, and I think if you genuinely are curious and you ask the questions in a very appropriate way so no one feels defensive, and you do it in appropriate timing and whatnot, the data you get back is so beyond beneficial, even if you didn't win the opportunity. In that scenario, we almost didn't win it because the timing was really tight. And so that was fair. But I think he was thinking about it the wrong way. And I think he was getting set up for failure because other agencies probably would have failed also with what he was expecting them to kind of solve world hunger in a week and a half. So anyways, I think that's a really kind of good point of view. And I loved your analogy on the walls. Um, First of all, I think I want to see a picture of that. Like my brain can't process how that's possible. Um, but I think it's just so interesting to kind of think about it from that point of view, as far as like look-alike audience mindset. These conversations will help you figure out a better way of who to invest energy in trying to have conversations with. And without that data, I don't think you would know where to go.
Hmm. I got nothing to add. I think this was a great one.
Oh,
I
good.
hope I hope some of you feel a little bit better about the referral situation, and some of you might take a look and see how you could be more active and not passive. But either way, we are always open to asking any questions or answering questions, I guess. But all right, Jay, this was amazing, and I will send you the wall. I did not take a picture, sadly enough, but I'll get you that detail.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Revenue Rewired podcast. Send us your questions to podcast@stringcaninteractive.com and follow us for more insights to drive your business forward.